When ADHD is part of a relationship, communication can feel, well, like you're just constantly fighting an uphill battle. But what if the problem isn't the people involved? What if it's the system you're using to talk to each other? Today, we're going to walk through a really practical 5-step framework that's all about shifting that dynamic from constant conflict to real connection.
Oof, just let that sentence land for a second. If that feels familiar, if that just hit you right in the gut, you know exactly how devastating that feeling is to intimacy, to partnership. It's one of the most common things we hear, and it points to a massive crisis happening in so many relationships.
And that crisis has a name. It's called the parent-child dynamic. It's this destructive, vicious cycle where one partner ends up being the manager, right? The one who has to remind, to organize, to be the parent, and the other partner feels like they're constantly being nagged, criticized, and just failing. You get resentment building on one side and this deep, sinking feeling of shame on the other. But what if it has nothing to do with a lack of love or effort? To get out of that cycle, the very first step, the most crucial one, is to change how you see the problem. This is not a character flaw. It's not a moral failing. It's about neurology. You have to understand how the brain is wired to even begin to find a path forward. So first up, you've got something called executive function deficits, or EFD. Just think of executive functions as the CEO of your brain. They're in charge of all the management stuff, planning, organizing, controlling impulses. And when that CEO system has some challenges, you see it in the real world. It looks like forgotten appointments, projects that never get finished, and just a constant state of disorganization. And then there's the other piece of the puzzle, rejection-sensitive dysphoria, or RSD. This is a really intense emotional sensitivity to being criticized, or even just thinking you're being rejected. In a relationship, this is huge. It can turn a simple, harmless comment into what feels like a major personal attack, which then triggers this huge emotional storm of anger or sadness. And here's where the rubber meets the road. Look at the real-world impact of these neurological differences. Research shows that couples where ADHD is a factor report 3.5 times more conflict over just managing the household. 3.5 times. That's not a small difference. That is a massive, daily source of friction that comes directly from those executive function deficits we just talked about. Now, this slide is where we really connect the dots, and this is so important to see. The inattention and working memory issues, they aren't just about zoning out. For the other partner, it feels like they're being ignored, like they don't matter. The verbal impulsivity, it's not just interrupting, it forces the other partner to feel like they're constantly walking on eggshells. And that RSD, it fuels this never-ending cycle of arguments and pulling away. Seeing these direct lines from the symptom to the pain point is the key to finally breaking that cycle.
So if the problem is neurological, then just trying harder is never going to be the solution. And that brings us to the single most important idea in this entire explainer, the system over person mandate.
This right here, this is the new ground rule. This is the whole thing. When something goes wrong, a chore gets forgotten, a conversation goes sideways, you stop blaming the person. Instead, you both turn and look at the system you were using and you ask, okay, where did our system fail us? This simple shift is a game changer. It takes shame and defensiveness completely off the table, and it creates the emotional safety you need to actually solve the problem. Now, this is crucial. You absolutely cannot introduce this new way of thinking in the middle of an argument. It will not work. Instead, you schedule a time when things are calm, a low-pressure meeting you can call a huddle, to learn the system together. This reframes everything right away. You're not parent and child anymore, you're partners, you're teammates, working together on a shared project. Okay, so we've got the foundational mindset in place. We understand the why. Now let's get into the how. Here is the practical 5-step action plan that really brings this whole philosophy to life. So here's our roadmap. Number 1, you both commit to that mandate we just talked about. Number 2, you use external tools to support the brain. 3, you create a clear protocol for when things get heated. 4, you literally change the words you use. And 5, you master the art of repairing after a fight. Let's break each of those down. Step 2 is all about building external support. You can think of it as scaffolding. The ADHD brain can struggle with internal structure, so you build it on the outside. You use a timer, so you each get 5 minutes to speak without being interrupted. You create a shared digital calendar that becomes your shared external memory bank. And you break big, overwhelming tasks into tiny, tiny steps. Like the first step isn't do the taxes, it's open the laptop. These aren't crutches, they are smart, effective tools. For step 3, the timeout protocol, this number is key. When a fight gets too hot, you both agree to call a timeout for a minimum of 30 minutes. Why 30 minutes? Well, there's actually brain science behind it. That's about how long it takes for the stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to flush out of your system. It lets the logical, rational part of your brain come back online so you can actually talk. Step 4 is a total game changer. It's all about transforming your language. Just look at the difference here. You always ignore me. That's an accusation. It's a character attack, and it's going to trigger defensiveness and RSD every single time. But I feel unheard when I'm speaking. That's a statement about your internal experience. It's not an attack on them. It's an invitation to connect and solve a problem together. See the difference? All right, now we're moving to the final and, maybe the most crucial step of all. It's about what happens after the fight is over, the repair. This right here is everything. Trust in a relationship isn't broken because you have fights. All couples fight. Trust is broken when you fail to repair things effectively afterward. When you can shift your goal away from trying to win the argument and instead focus on getting really, really good at the repair process, that's when you start building a foundation of trust that is absolutely unshakable.
And here's exactly how you do it. In what we call a repair huddle, you each share your feelings using those I statements. Then you validate each other's reality. That doesn't mean you have to agree, but you can say, I understand why you felt that way. Then you each own your part in what happened. But this last step is the magic. You end by asking, what tool failed us? Where did our system break down? And you agree on a specific fix for next time. It's not about blame. It's about making your system stronger. That's how you rebuild trust for real.
So, we'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. What would actually change in your relationship if every single conflict became an opportunity? Not an opportunity to prove who's right and who's wrong, but a chance to collaborate, to perfect your shared system, and to build a stronger, more resilient connection together. Thanks for joining us.